fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome to the stream. Welcome back to Storytime Saturdays. Well, Saturday for now. I believe this is number 13, where I'll be reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So last Saturday, I said that could be my last stream. I haven't started working yet. My paperwork is kind of messed up. At least that's what I think is going on. I'm hoping it's not. I hope they're not changing their minds about hiring me. It seemed like they wanted to hire me. I just have yet to hear from them about it. So I haven't started working yet. So I'm going to stream while I can. So I might as well. So here we are. Another Storytime Saturday. At least while it is a stream. Hopefully in the future, if I do start working, I will continue to make these videos. They might not be streams, but I will still make them as best I can. We'll see. Yeah, we're doing this today because I can. So there. Okay, so hi, welcome to the stream. Please feel free to comment in the chat, or if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to comment on the video. Please leave a like on the video. It's really helpful. It tells YouTube that you like the video, and YouTube is more likely to share it with other people. The more likes I get, the more views I get. Also, if you want more content like this, click the subscribe button also down below, and click the bell icon right next to it so you can be notified the next time I upload and the next time I go live. I usually have a regular live stream schedule of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But I don't know when I start working. So far, like as of right now, everything is normal. And I will probably stream on Thursday at 6 p.m. Streaming The Sims or whatever. Usually it's The Sims. But I don't know if that will be the case. That might change. So I'm hesitant on telling people I have a regular stream schedule because that might not be for much longer. But as of right now, yes, I'm streaming on Thursday. But if not, I'll let you know. And you can find out by following me on Twitter. Link in the description. That is where I give all my information, links to all my streams and my videos. If you want to know what's going on, if things get canceled, or just my normal everyday thoughts, follow me on Twitter. Okay, so welcome if you're new, and hi. So I will be reading chapters 8 and 9 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, but it's not strictly an audiobook. I'm not just reading it. I'm also going to stop every once in a while and comment on what I'm reading, make jokes, make references, that sort of thing. And that being said, there will probably be spoilers. I will be talking about everything and anything. So if you don't want the story or anything else Harry Potter related spoiled for you, I suggest you watch something else. Yeah, cool, awesome. So we will get started. Forgive me, I'm a little tired. I don't know, I did exercise today, so yeah, I have sufficient reason to be tired. Also, I hope my chat isn't broken. I have my chat on my phone, so I'll be able to see it if somebody comments. But anyway, yeah, chapters 8 and 9. We're gonna start getting into the thick of it. I feel like there's something I was supposed to say and I haven't said it. I don't know. I'm sure it'll probably come to me. Chapter 8, The Deathday Party. Most of this chapter is cut out entirely in the movie. Most of it. October arrived, spreading a damp chill over the grounds and into the castle. Madame Pomfrey, the nurse, was kept busy by a sudden spate of colds. I've never seen that word before in my life. I'm gonna look it up. Forgive me if I knock over my microphone. The definition of spate. A large number of similar things or events appearing or occurring in quick succession. Okay. A sudden flood in a river, especially one caused by heavy rains or melting snow. Oh. Is it? And I think it's pronounced spate. Spate. I like it. Okay. Cool. Helpful. Okay. I don't know if I want to write the definition on here. Usually I like to write the definition of the word. I underlined it here and I put a question mark by it, but I didn't actually look it up the last time I read this. Large number of... I can't write. Large number of... I did the same thing twice. Similar things. I don't know if I spelled similar right. If I did, I wouldn't be able to read it in the future. Similar, right? I think that's how you spell it. Okay. Large number of similar things. Okay. It's more complicated than that. It's a large number of similar things coming on at once. Maybe I'll put that too. Coming at once. I'll put coming at once. Alright. Large number of similar things coming at once. Okay. Madame Humphrey, the nurse, was kept busy by a sudden spate of colds among the staff and students. Her pepper-up potion worked instantly, though it left the drinker smoking at the ears for several hours afterwards. The pepper-up potion. Okay, so way back when, in the 90s, it's not that... Harry Potter isn't that old. I mean, this book was written in 1999, but the movies, when the movies came out in the early 2000s, well, they've been released since 2015, right? 15 years of, right? The last Harry Potter movie came out 2015. No, 2011. I'm thinking the 15th. 7/15/11 was the day that the last Harry Potter movie premiered in theaters. That's why I'm looking over there. The date is written there. 2011. So from 2000 to like 2011, the Harry Potter movies were released. But anyway, in the early 2000s, when the movies were primarily targeted towards children, there was a slew of Harry Potter toys that came out, and there's a ton. You could probably still find them online and on eBay and whatnot. One of my best friends, she had like every Harry Potter toy there ever was. She had like every figurine, she had like a little Quidditch pitch thing. Oh man, she had everything. Even like really creepy looking figurines and stuff. But there was one Harry Potter toy that I got for Christmas one year, and it was this potion making kit. And you could make actual potions that you could consume, and one of them was the pepper-up potion. And I had completely forgotten I ever owned anything like that until I just read that. The pepper-up potion. Yeah, and I remember it has like a cinnamon flavor, so it does feel like you're drinking something kind of hot. It had like a cinnamon flavor or something or other. It was spicy. So it would give the feeling that you were drinking something that would cause you smoking at the ears, even though it's not really like that. But it was like you get like you have this little cauldron, you like mix it together, you put it in a little tumbler, and you can drink it. Wow, I forgot that I ever owned such a thing, that even such a thing existed till I just read that. Wow, cool. Ginny Weasley, who had been looking pale, was bullied into taking some by Percy. Ginny is looking pale, is she? That's a hint. It's not foreshadowing, But it is a hint if you know the ending. That's why I've underlined it and put a star by it. Why is Ginny pale? The steam pouring from under her vivid hair gave the impression that her whole head was on fire. Raindrops the size of bullets thundered on the castle windows for days on end. The lake rose, the flower beds turned into muddy streams, and Hagrid's pumpkins swelled to the size of garden sheds. Oliver Wood's enthusiasm for regular training sessions, however, was not dampened. Oh, that is such good diction used by J.K. Rowling. That is perfect. That is exactly... because everything is, like, wet, but dampened as in it has not been squashed. Oh my gosh, that's so good. That's perfect. Which was why Harry was to be found late one stormy Saturday afternoon a few days before Halloween, returning to Gryffindor Tower drenched to the skin and splattered with mud. Even aside from the rain and wind, it hadn't been a happy practice session. Fred and George, who had been spying on the Slytherin team, had seen for themselves the speed of those new Nimbus 2001s. They reported that the Slytherin team was no more than 7 greenish blurs shooting through the air like missiles. A broom does not make a good Quidditch player. You need to be a good Quidditch player. It doesn't matter what kind of broom you have. I'm sure they help, but that doesn't mean they're a better team. As Harry squelched along the deserted corridor, he came across somebody who looked just as preoccupied as he was. Nearly Headless Nick, the ghost of Gryffindor Tower, was staring morosely out of a window, muttering under his breath, "Don't fulfill the requirements. Half an inch, if that." "Hello, Nick," said Harry. Hello, said Nearly Headless Nick, starting and looking round. He wore a dashing plumed hat on his long curly hair, and tunic with a ruff, which concealed the fact that his neck was almost completely severed. He was pale as smoke, and Harry could see right through him to the dark sky and torrential rain outside. "You look troubled, young Potter," said Nick, folding a transparent letter as he spoke and tucking it inside his doublet. He has a transparent letter. How do you make a ghostly letter where it's like transparent? How does that work? How do you do that? I don't know. "So do you," said Harry. "Ah," Nearly Headless Nick waved an elegant hand. "A matter of no importance. It's not as though I really wanted to join. Thought I'd apply, but apparently I don't fulfill requirements." In spite of his airy tone, there was a look of great bitterness on his face. "But you would think, wouldn't you," he erupted suddenly, pulling the letter back out of his pocket, "that getting hit 45 times in the neck with a blunt axe would qualify you to join the Headless Hunt?" I'm just thinking about being a ghost and what little you would have to look forward to. Also, I think it's great that he mentioned this. I know he mentioned it in the movie, the first movie, but I don't remember if he said it in the book. He might have. I guess he reapplies every year. "Oh, yes," said Harry, who was obviously supposed to agree. "I mean, nobody wishes more than I do that it had all been quick and clean, and my head had come off properly. I mean, it would have saved me a great deal of pain and ridicule. However," Nearly Headless Nick shook his letter open and read furiously, "we can only accept huntsmen whose heads have parted company with their bodies. You will appreciate that it would be impossible otherwise for members to participate in hunt activities such as horseback head juggling and head polo. It is with the greatest regret, therefore, that I must inform you that you do not fulfill our requirements. With very best wishes, Sir Patrick Delaney Podmore." Fuming, Nearly Headless Nick stuffed the letter away. "Half an inch of skin and sinew, holding my neck on, Harry. Most people would think that's good and beheaded, but oh no, it's not enough for so properly decapitated Podmore." Nearly Headless Nick took several deep breaths and then said, in a fair calmer tone, "So, what's bothering you? Anything I can do?" "No," said Harry, "not unless you know where we can get 7 free Nimbus 2001s for our match against the..." The rest of Harry's sentence was drowned out by a high-pitched mewling, from somewhere near his ankles. He looked down and found himself gazing into a pair of lamp-like yellow eyes. It was Mrs. Norris, the skeletal gray cat who was used by the caretaker, Argus Filch, as a sort of deputy in his endless battle against students. It's important to be introduced to Norris at this point because she becomes important later in the chapter. "You'd better get out of here, Harry," said Nick quickly. "Filch isn't in a good mood. He's got the flu, and some third years accidentally plastered frog brains all over the ceiling in Dungeon 5. He's been cleaning all morning, and if he sees you dripping mud all over the place—" "Right," said Harry, backing away from the accusing stare of Mrs. Norris, but not quickly enough. Drawn to the spot by the mysterious power that seemed to connect him with his foul cat, Argus Filch burst suddenly through a tapestry to Harry's right, wheezing and looking wildly about for the rule breaker. What special connection does Filch have with Mrs. Norris? It's almost like Mrs. Norris isn't... I don't know if that was ever confirmed for us or not. I also forget what they're called. Crookshanks isn't actually a cat. She's actually something else. I forget what they're called. They look like cats. They're similar to cats, but they're actually more intelligent and have the ability to understand people. And I wonder if Mrs. Norris is one of them. I don't know if it was ever confirmed. I wonder if the wiki would tell us. Let me make sure I'm spelling her name right. Mrs. Norris. It's 2 R's. The wiki fandom. Right. Oh. Ads. Invasive ads. I just read that. Just trying to see if it mentions it. I don't think so. It's talking about all the encounters that we have with Mrs. Norris. Physical appearance. Where's that from? But she was very affectionate toward her owner, Filch. This affection was not limited to just Filch, however. Mrs. Norris showed a liking to a select few individuals. Alonza Alves and the Chimera at the Magical Creatures Reserve being among them. I don't remember anything. I don't remember those people at all. What are they talking about? Huh? What? Where's this from? What is this? I'm sorry, I went down a rabbit hole. Oh, okay. Okay, I remember. Yeah, I'm like, what the hell is this? Okay, so they mention other fandoms in the wiki. And so, I'm like, I don't know who that is. I don't know who these people are. Jacob, who's that? And then it takes me, Jacob's sibling couldn't access her mind. That's from Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery, the mobile game. Oh, okay. I was like, I swear, I've read every book I don't know Jacob in these books at all. Who are you talking about? They're talking about the app, the mobile app game. Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember. I know who they're talking about now. And I haven't played that game either, so I don't know very much about it, but I do understand what they're talking about now. Okay. This is, yes, I think it's pronounced Kneasel. Mrs. Norris seems exceptionally smart for a cat, to the point that many have suspected she is a Kneasel cross, a cat Kneasel cross like Crookshanks or an Animagus. However, J.K. Rowling has stated on her website that she is just a highly unpleasant cat. This was confirmed again when Rowling stated on Twitter in response to a fan query that Mrs. Norris would lose in a very brutal close fight with Crookshanks, as Crookshanks' Kneasel ancestry would eventually give him the edge. Okay. So, yes, okay. So I wondered about that. I was wondering if Mrs. Norris was a Kneasel or not. And she's not. She's just a very strange cat. Okay. Thank you for clarifying Wiki fandom. Fandom Wiki? The Harry Potter Wiki. It's very helpful. A very helpful resource. Alright. Okay, good. So she's not a Kneasel. She's just a strange cat. But Crookshanks is at least half Kneasel. Where are we? There was a thick tartan scarf bound around his head, and his nose was unusually purple. Filth, he shouted, his jowls a-quiver, his eyes popping alarmingly as he pointed at the muddy puddle that had dripped from Harry's Quidditch robes. Mess and muck everywhere. I've had enough of it, I tell you. Follow me, Potter. So Harry waved a gloomy goodbye to Nearly Headless Nick and followed Filch back downstairs, doubling the number of muddy footprints on the floor. This is really important, because Filch is now going to punish, he's going to punish Harry, or at least attempt to, and it's really important for later, because they're going to claim that Harry is the heir of Slytherin, and that Harry petrified Mrs. Norris to get back at Mr. Filch. Harry had never been inside Filch's office before. It was a place most students avoided. The room was dingy and windowless, lit by a single oil lamp dangling from the low ceiling. A faint smell of fried fish lingered about the place. Wooden filing cabinets stood around the walls. From their labels, Harry could see that they contained details of every pupil Filch had ever punished. Fred and George Weasley had an entire drawer to themselves. A highly polished collection of chains and manacles hung on the wall behind Filch's desk. It was common knowledge that he was always begging Dumbledore to let him suspend students by their ankles from the ceiling. Filch grabbed a quill from a pot on his desk and began shuffling around, looking for parchment. Dung, he muttered furiously. Great sizzling dragon bogies. Frog brains. Rat intestines. I've had enough of it. Make an example. Where's the form? Yes. He retrieved a large roll of parchment from his desk drawer and stretched it out in front of him, dipping his long black quill into the ink pot. Name? Harry Potter. Crime? It was only a bit of mud, said Harry. It's only a bit of mud to you, boy, but to me it's an extra hour scrubbing, shouted Filch. A drip shivering unpleasantly at the end of his bulbous nose. Crime? Befouling the castle. Suggested sentence? Dabbing at his streaming nose, Filch squinted unpleasantly at Harry, who waited with bated breath for his sentence to fall. But as Filch lowered his quill, there was a great bang on the ceiling of the office, which made the oil lamp rattle. It is rather cruel that Filch, who, as we will find out very soon, can't do magic. He is what is called a squib, which is the opposite of a Muggleborn. He has two magical parents, but he has no magic blood in him. So he can't do magic. So essentially he's made to clean this whole castle by himself without magic. It's quite awful. But to be fair, Dumbledore hired him because no one else would. Because squibs Squibs are in a lot of ways worse off than Muggleborns because at least they can do magic. At least they can pretend to fit in, whereas Squibs can't even attempt. So a lot of people don't like them. They're prejudiced against them. Peeves! Filch roared, flinging down his quill in a transport of rage. I'll have you this time! I'll have you! And without a backward glance at Harry, Filch ran flat-footed from the office, Mrs. Norris shrieking alongside him. Peeves was a school poltergeist, a grinning airborne menace who lived to cause havoc and distress. Harry didn't much like Peeves, but couldn't help feeling grateful for his timing. Hopefully, whatever Peeves had done, and it sounded as though he'd wrecked something very big this time, would distract Filch from Harry. Thinking that he should probably wait for Filch to come back, Harry sank into a moth-eaten chair next to the desk. There was only one thing on it apart from his half-completed form, a large, glossy, purple envelope with silver lettering on the front. With a quick glance at the door to check that Filch wasn't on his way back, Harry picked up the envelope and read. If only Harry knew how to clean up the mess with magic. Because if I was Harry, I'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to clean it up real quick and leave. That way Filch won't have a reason to look for him. Like, he'll see, oh, it's clean. I don't care. Hopefully that's what Filch would do. I don't know. Sometimes Filch likes to be mean for no reason, but... Quick Spell, a correspondence course in beginner's magic. Intrigued, Harry flicked the envelope open and pulled out the sheaf of parchment inside. More curly silver writing on the front page said, Feel out of step in the world of modern magic? Find yourself making excuses not to perform simple spells? Ever been taunted for your... for your woeful wand work? There is an answer. Look at this. This font is quite hard to read. Quick Spell is an all-new, fail-safe, quick result, easy learn course. Hundreds of witches and wizards have benefited from the Quick Spell method. Madam Z. Needles of Topsham writes, I had no memory for incantations, and my potions were a family joke. Now, after a Quick Spell course, I am the center of attention at parties, and friends beg for the recipe of my scintillation solution. I don't know what that is. Warwick D.J. Prod of Didsbury says, My wife used to sneer at my feeble charms, but 1 month into your fabulous Quick Spell course, and I succeeded in turning her into a yak. Thank you, Quick Spell. Thank you, Quick Spell. Fascinated, Harry thumbed through the rest of the envelope's contents. Why on earth did Filch want a Quick Spell course? Did this mean he wasn't a proper wizard? Harry was just reading Lesson 1, Holding Your Wand, some useful tips, when shuffling footsteps outside told him Filch was coming back. Stuffing the parchment back into the envelope, Harry threw it back onto the desk just as the door opened. Filch was looking triumphant. Oh, listen to this next sentence. That vanishing cabinet was extremely valuable. The vanishing cabinet. Actually. So that's a reference to Half-Blood Prince. I love it, like, when, like, J.K. Rowling planned the whole thing, and she, like, drops hints for stuff that's going to come up later. The Vanishing Cabinet is going to be extremely important in Half-Blood Prince, and also there's a lot of connections to Half-Blood Prince in the Chamber of Secrets. This is one of them. Yeah, the Vanishing Cabinet. And it's actually, the Vanishing Cabinet is, it's actually kind of a inside joke between me and my friends. I don't know how it gets started. We just made fun of the way they said cabinet in the movie, so they just really pronounce it cabinet. And so just the way they say it, it's like a vanishing cabinet. So actually we all have I'm gonna go get it. My friend actually she bought all three of us this poster from Hot Topic of the Vanishing Cabinet. I'm gonna show it to you because I don't have it hung yet. Vanishing Cabinet. You have 2 cabinets on it. It says Borgin and Burke's to Hogwarts. It has Draco back there. Fun, fun, fun. So, yeah, it's just fun that the book mentions the Vanishing Cabinet. Also, yeah. You'll see me mention this many times. I should probably like do a drawing of it or something, but the books make a pyramid, and it's like they connect in certain ways. The books, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 and 7 have connections, 2 and 6 have connections, 3 and 5 have connections, and 4 kind of connects with 1 and 7. So 2 and 6 have a lot of connections, so you're going to find stuff from Half-Blood Prince all over the book. And there's one of them, the Vanishing Cabinet. We have Peeves out this time, my sweet. His eyes fell on Harry and then darted to the quick spell envelope, which Harry realized too late was lying 2 feet away from where it had started. Also, it's important for Harry to have read this envelope, because now Harry knows that Filch is a squib, so that's more evidence that people will have against Harry, claiming that he is the heir of Slytherin, because Slytherin wants to get of all non-magic people. And a squib would qualify as that. So supposedly Harry would petrify Mrs. Norris to get back at Filch, and because he's a squib. Filch's pasty face went brick red. Harry braced himself for a tidal wave of fury. Filch hobbled across to his desk and snatched up the envelope and threw it into a drawer. Did you read? He sputtered. No, Harry lied quickly. Filch's knobbly hands were twisting together. If I thought you'd read my private... Not that it's mine. For a friend. But be that as it may. However, Harry was staring at him, alarmed. Filch had never looked madder. His eyes were popping. A tick was going in one of his pouchy cheeks, and the tartan scarf didn't help. Very well. Go. And don't breathe a word. Not that... However, if you didn't read... Go now. I have to write up Peeves's report. Go. Amazed at his luck, Harry sped out of the office, up the corridor, and back upstairs. To escape from Filch's office without punishment was probably some kind of school record. Harry, did it work? Nearly the Snick was gliding out of a classroom. Behind him, Harry could see the wreckage of a large black and gold cabinet that appeared to have been dropped from a great height. The Vanishing Cabinet. I persuaded Peeves to crash it right over Filch's office. Is that why it's broken? Is Peeves the one that broke? I didn't even make that connection. Peeves is the reason why it's broken. Like, Half-Blood Prince, the whole time Draco Malfoy is trying to fix it. Peeves is the reason why it's broken. Huh. I never even considered that. Huh. It's not a huge revelation, but still, I just never made the connection. Maybe I should write that down. Peeves is the reason it's broken. Yeah. Said Nick eagerly. I thought it might distract him. Was that you? Said Harry gratefully. Yeah, it worked. I didn't even get detention. Thanks, Nick. They set off up the corridor together. Nearly Headless Nick, Harry noticed, was still holding Sir Patrick's rejection letter. I wish there was something I could do for you about the Headless Hunt, Harry said. Nearly Headless Nick stopped in its tracks, and Harry walked right through him. He wished he hadn't. It was like stepping through an icy shower. But there is something you could do for me. said Nick excitedly. Harry, would I be asking too much? But no, you wouldn't want. What is it? Said Harry. Well, this Halloween will be my 500th death day, said Nearly-Headless Nick, drawing himself up and looking dignified. Oh, said Harry, not sure whether he should look sorry or happy about this. Right. I'm holding a party down in one of the Rumia dungeons. Friends will be coming from all over the country. So ghosts travel. It would be such an honor if he would attend. Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger would be most welcome too, of course, but I dare say you'd rather go to the school feast? He asked Harry on tenterhooks. No, said Harry quickly. I'll come. My dear boy, Harry Potter, my Death Day party. And, he hesitated, looking excited, do you think you could possibly mention to Sir Patrick how very frightening and impressive you find me? Of course, said Harry. Nearly-Headless Nick beamed at him. A Death Day party, said Hermione keenly, when Harry had changed at last and joined her and Ron in the common room. I bet there aren't many living people who can say they've been to one of those. It'll be fascinating. Why would anyone want to celebrate the day they died? Said Ron, who was halfway through his potions homework and grumpy. Sounds dead depressing to me. Rain was still lashing the windows, which was now inky black, but inside all looked bright and cheerful. The firelight glowed over the countless squashy armchairs where people sat reading, talking, doing homework, or, in the case of Fred and George Weasley, trying to find out what would happen if you fed a filibuster firework to a salamander. Fred had rescued a brilliant orange fire-dwelling lizard from a Care of Magical Creatures class, and it was now smoldering gently on a table surrounded by a knot of curious people. Yeah, they are, salamanders. They are in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. They're also featured in the Goblet of Fire video game. That's how I know that's how I know them best, is from that video game. I'm trying to think if they're in any other video game. They might be. I actually think that they're featured in the older ones too. I think they're in Chamber of Secrets as well, actually, now that I think about it. They might be in Prisoner of Azkaban. Excuse me. I don't know, I didn't play those games, but I have watched other people play them, so I kind of have an idea. Harry was at the point of telling Ron and Hermione about Filch and the Quick Spell course when the salamander suddenly whizzed into the air, emitting loud sparks and bangs as it whirled wildly round the room. The sight of Percy bellowing himself hoarse at Fred and George, the spectacular display of tangerine stars showering from the salamander's mouth, and its escape into the fire with accompanying explosions, drove both Filch and the Quick Spell envelope from Harry's mind. Is that a convenient event? What would have happened if Harry had told them about the Quick Spell envelope? I don't know. What? I don't know. It's just the way that it's written, it makes it sound like J.K. Rowling made it purposeful that he not tell them about it. I don't know. Maybe it makes him look more suspicious or something later. I don't know. By the time Halloween arrived, Harry was regretting his rash promise to go to the Death Day party. The rest of the school was happily anticipating their Halloween feast. The great hall had been decorated with the usual live bats. Hagrid's vast pumpkins had been carved into lanterns large enough for 3 men to sit in, and there were rumors that Dumbledore had booked a troupe of dancing skeletons for the entertainment. That's cool. Oh, like in Lego Harry Potter? those cute little dancing skeletons that you can sometimes assemble. And sometimes you play those little radios and they'll dance. Oh man, I want to play that for the channel soon. I would like to. A promise is a promise, Hermione reminded Harry bossily. You said you'd go to the Death Day party. So at 7 o'clock, Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked straight past the doorway to the packed great hall, which was glittering. Oh, I told you I was tired. invitingly with gold plates and candles, and directed their steps instead toward the dungeons. The passageway leading to Nearly Headless Nick's party had been lined with candles too, though the effect was far from cheerful. Different. Words are important. These were long, thin, jet-black tapers, all burning bright blue. Are they the same candles in the Department of Mysteries at Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix? Probably. Cast a dim, ghostly light even over their own living faces. The temperature dropped with every step they took. As Harry shivered and drew his robes tightly around him, he heard what sounded like 1,000 fingernails scraping an enormous blackboard. Is that supposed to be music? Ron whispered. They turned a corner and saw Nearly Headless Nick standing at a doorway hung with black velvet drapes. I am. Yeah, I explained in the beginning that I haven't started working yet, so I thought I might as well stream. Yeah, it's good to see you. My dear friends, he said mournfully, welcome, welcome. So pleased you could come. He swept off his plumed hat and bowed them inside. It was an incredible sight. The dungeon was full of hundreds of pearly white, translucent people, mostly drifting around a crowded dance floor, waltzing to the dreadful, quavering sound of 30 musical saws, played by an orchestra on a raised, black-draped platform. A chandelier overhead blazed midnight blue with 1,000 more black candles. Their breath rose in a mist before them. It was like stepping into a freezer. Shall we have a look around? Harry suggested, wanting to warm up his feet. Careful not to walk through anyone, said Ron nervously, and they set off around the edge of the dance floor. They passed a group of gloomy nuns, a ragged man wearing chains, and the fat friar, a cheerful Hufflepuff ghost, who was talking to a knight with an arrow sticking out of his forehead. Harry wasn't surprised to see that the Bloody Baron, a gaunt, staring Slytherin ghost covered in silver bloodstains, was being given a wide berth by the other ghosts. Oh no, said Hermione, stopping abruptly. Turn back, I don't want to talk to Moaning Myrtle. Who? Said Harry as they backtracked quickly. She haunts one of the toilets in the girls' bathroom on the first floor, said Hermione. She haunts a toilet? Yes, it's been out of order all year because she keeps having tantrums and flooding the place. I never went in there anyway if I could avoid it. It's awful trying to have a pee with her wailing at you. Look, food, said Ron. On the other side of the dungeon was a long table, also covered in black velvet. They approached it eagerly, but next moment had stopped in their tracks, horrified. The smell was quite disgusting. Large, rotten fish were laid on handsome silver platters. Cakes, burned charcoal black, were heaped on salvers. There was a great maggoty haggis, a slab of cheese covered in furry green mold, and in pride of place an enormous gray cake in the shape of a tombstone with tar-like icing forming the words, Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, died 31st October 1492. Harry watched, amazed, as a portly ghost approached the table, crouched low, and walked through it, his mouth held wide so that it passed through one of the stinking salmon. Can you taste it if you walk through it? Harry asked him. Almost, said the ghost sadly, and he drifted away. I expect they've let it rot to give it a stronger flavor, said Hermione knowledgeably, pinching her nose and leaning closer to look at the putrid haggis. Can we move? I feel sick, said Ron. They had barely turned around, however, when a little man swooped suddenly from under the table and came to a halt in midair before them. Hello, Peeves, said Harry cautiously. Unlike the ghosts around them, Peeves the poltergeist was the very reverse of pale and transparent. He was wearing a bright orange party hat, a revolving bow tie, and a broad grin on his wide, wicked face. Nibbles? He said sweetly, offering them a bowl of peanuts covered in fungus. No thanks, said Hermione. Heard you talking about poor Myrtle, said Peeves, his eyes dancing. Rude you was about poor Myrtle. He took a deep breath and bellowed, Oi, Myrtle! Oh no, Peeves, don't tell her what I said. She'll be really upset, Hermione whispered frantically. I didn't mean it. I don't mind her. Oh, hello, Myrtle. The squat ghost of a girl had glided over. She had the glummest face Harry had ever seen, half hidden behind lank hair and thick, pearly spectacles. "What?" she said sulkily. "How are you, Myrtle?" said Hermione in a falsely bright voice. "It's nice to see you out of the toilet." Myrtle sniffed. "Miss Granger was just talking about you," said Peeves slyly in Myrtle's ear. "Just saying, how nice you look tonight," said Hermione, glaring at Peeves. Myrtle eyed Hermione suspiciously. "You're making fun of me," she said, silver tears welling rapidly in her small, see-through eyes. "No, honestly. Didn't I say how nice Myrtle's looking?" said Hermione, nudging Harry and Ron painfully in the ribs. "Oh, yeah, she did. Don't lie to me," Myrtle gasped, tears now flooding down her face, while Peeves chuckled happily over her shoulder. "Do you think I don't know what people call me behind my back? Fat Myrtle, ugly Myrtle, miserable, moaning, moping Myrtle." "You've forgotten Pimply," Peeves hissed in her ear. Moaning Myrtle burst into anguished sobs and fled from the dungeon. Peeves shot after her, pelting her with moldy peanuts, yelling, "Pimply, Pimply!" "Oh, dear," said Hermione sadly. Nearly Headless Nick now drifted toward them through the crowd. "Enjoying yourselves?" "Oh, yes," they lied. "Not a bad turnout," said Nearly Headless Nick proudly. "The Wailing Widow came all the way up from Kent. It's nearly time for my speech. I'd better go and warn the orchestra." The orchestra, however, stopped playing at that very moment. They and everyone else in the dungeon fell silent, looking around in excitement, as a hunting horn sounded. "Oh, here we go," said Nearly Headless Nick bitterly. Through the dungeon wall burst a dozen ghost horses, each ridden by a headless horseman. The assembly clapped wildly. Harry started to clap too, but stopped quickly at the sight of Nick's face. The horses galloped into the middle of the dance floor and halted, rearing and plunging. At the front of the pack was a large ghost who held his bearded head under his arm, from which position he was blowing the horn. The ghost leapt down, lifted his head high in the air so he could see over the crowd — everyone laughed — and strode over to Nearly Headless Nick, squashing his head back onto his neck. "Nick," he roared, "how are you? Head still hanging in there?" He gave a hearty guffaw and clapped Nearly Headless Nick on the shoulder. "Welcome, Patrick," said Nick stiffly. "Livens," said Sir Patrick, spotting Harry, Ron, and Hermione and giving a huge fake jump of astonishment so that his head fell off again. The crowd howled with laughter. "Very amusing," said Nearly Headless Nick darkly. "Don't mind Nick," shouted Sir Patrick's head from the floor. "Still upset we won't let him join the hunt? But I mean to say, look at the fellow." "I think," said Harry hurriedly, at a meaningful look from Nick, "Nick's very frightening and, Ha!" yelled Sir Patrick's head. "But I asked you to say that." "If I could have everyone's attention, it's time for my speech," said Nearly Headless Nick loudly, striding toward the podium and climbing into an icy blue spotlight. "My late lamented lords, ladies, and gentlemen, it is my great sorrow—" But nobody heard much more. Sir Patrick and the rest of the Headless Hunt had just started a game of head hockey, and the crowd were turning to watch. Nearly Headless Nick tried vainly to recapture his audience, but gave up as Sir Patrick's head went sailing past him to loud cheers. Harry was very cold by now, not to mention hungry. "I can't stand much more of this," Ron muttered, his teeth chattering as the orchestra ground back into action and the ghosts swept back onto the dance floor. "Let's go," Harry agreed. They backed toward the door, nodding and beaming at anyone who looked at them, and a minute later were hurrying back up the passageway full of black candles. "Pudding might not be finished yet," said Ron hopefully, leading the way toward the steps to the entrance hall. And then Harry heard it. "Rip, tear, kill." It was the same voice, the same cold, murderous voice he had heard in Lockhart's office. He stumbled to a halt, clutching at the stone wall, listening with all his might, looking around, squinting up and down the dimly lit passageway. "Harry, what are you—" "It's that voice again. Shut up a minute." "So hungry. For so long." "Listen," said Harry urgently, and Ron and Hermione froze, watching him. "Kill. Time to kill." The voice was growing fainter. Harry was sure it was moving away, moving upward, A mixture of fear and excitement gripped him as he stared at the dark ceiling. How could it be moving upward? Was it a phantom, to whom stone ceilings didn't matter? "This way," he shouted, and he began to run, up the stairs, into the entrance hall. It was no good hoping to hear anything here. The babble of talk from the Halloween feast was echoing out of the great hall. Harry sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Harry, what are we—" "Shh!" Harry strained his ears. Distantly from the floor above, and growing fainter still, he heard the voice. "I smell blood. I smell blood." His stomach lurched. "He's going to kill someone!" he shouted, and ignoring Ron's and Hermione's bewildered faces, he ran up the next flight of steps 3 at a time, trying to listen over his own pounding footsteps. Harry hurtled around the whole of the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting behind him, not stopping until they turned a corner into the last deserted passage. "Harry, what was that all about?" said Ron, wiping sweat off his face. "I couldn't hear anything." But Hermione gave a sudden gasp, pointing down the corridor. "Look!" Something was shining on the wall ahead. They approached slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high words had been dubbed on the wall between 2 windows, shimmering in the light cast by the flaming torches. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." "What's that thing hanging underneath?" said Ron, a slight quiver in his voice. As they edged nearer, Harry almost slipped. There was a large puddle of water on the floor. That's an important detail. A large puddle on the floor. Very important. Ron and Hermione grabbed him and they inched toward the message, eyes fixed on a dark shadow beneath it. All 3 of them realized what it was at once and leapt backward with a splash. Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, was hanging by her tail from the torch bracket. She was stiff as a board, her eyes wide and staring. For a few seconds they didn't move. Then Ron said, "Let's get out of here." "Shouldn't we try and help?" Harry began awkwardly. "Trust me," said Ron. "We don't want to be found here." Oh, that's so good! That gave me chills. How does he know? How does he know? I don't know. It's so good having Ron around, though. Because as smart as Hermione is, she still doesn't know as much about the wizarding world as Ron does, because Ron grew up in it. So, he already knows it's bad, and he's like, we need to get out of here. That's great. But it was too late. A rumble, as though of distant thunder, told them that the feast had just ended. From either end of the corridor where they stood came the sound of hundreds of feet climbing the stairs, and the loud, happy talk of well-fed people. Next moment, students were crashing into the passage from both ends. The chatter, the bustle, the noise died suddenly as the people in front spotted the hanging cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood alone in the middle of the corridor as silence fell among the mass of students pressing forward to see the grisly sight. Then someone shouted through the quiet, "Enemies of the air, beware! You'll be next, mudbloods." It was Draco Malfoy. He had pushed to the front of the crowd, his cold eyes alive, his usually bloodless face flushed as he grinned at the sight of the hanging, immobile cat. Oh, that's the end of the chapter. That's actually as you'll come to find, Draco Malfoy is actually the red herring in this book, which is so good. Draco Malfoy, for much of it, they think is the heir of Slytherin. He wishes he was the heir of Slytherin. He's not that cool. He's the red herring enemy. There's always red herring in every single book. There's a red herring. They think one thing is happening when really it's another thing, or they think this person's the bad guy, but really it's this person. That's one connection you can make between this book and Half-Blood Prince. Is in this book, Draco Malfoy appears to be the bad guy. Half-Blood Prince, Draco Malfoy appears to be the bad guy as well, though this time they don't believe he's the bad guy, but he really is. Sort of. Harry believes he's the bad guy. No one's listening to him, because Harry's usually wrong, to be fair. But yeah, and here he is being the bad guy. Yeah, but that's the end of the chapter. Chapter 9, the writing on the wall. I can't believe a whole chapter is dedicated to this conversation. Trying to think of what the next chapter is. Okay, the rope ledger. Okay. Well, I'm going to take a 15-minute break before I read chapter 9. So now is a good time to stop, get a drink, get a snack, use the restroom, stretch your legs, do whatever you gotta do, and I will be right back. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Now we're going to read chapter 9. I think at the end of this chapter, I think we'll be halfway through the book. Officially. Yay! Okay. So chapter 9. The Writing on the Wall. What's going on here? What's going on? Attracted, no doubt, by Malfoy's shout, Argus Filch came shouldering his way through the crowd. Then he saw Mrs. Norris and fell back, clutching his face in horror. My cat! My cat! What's happened to Mrs. Norris? He shrieked, and his popping eyes fell on Harry. You! He screeched. You've murdered my cat! You've killed her! I'll kill you! Argus! Dumbledore had arrived on the scene, followed by a number of other teachers. In seconds he had swept past Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and detached Mrs. Norris from the torch bracket. Come with me, Argus, he said to Filch. You too, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger. Lockhart stepped forward eagerly. My office is nearest, Headmaster. Just upstairs. Please feel free. Thank you, Gilderoy, said Dumbledore. The silent crowd parted to let them pass. Lockhart, looking excited and important, hurried after Dumbledore. So did Professors McGonagall and Snape. As they entered Lockhart's darkened office, there was a flurry of movement across the walls. Harry saw several of the Lockharts in the pictures dodging out of sight, their hair in rollers. The real Lockhart lit the candles on his desk and stood back. Dumbledore lay Mrs. Norris on the polished surface and began to examine her. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged tense looks and sank into chairs outside the pool of candlelight, watching. The tip of Dumbledore's long, crooked nose was barely an inch from Mrs. Norris's fur. He was looking at her closely through his half-moon spectacles, his long fingers gently prodding and poking. Professor McGonagall was bent almost as close, her eyes narrowed. Snape loomed behind them, half in shadow, wearing a most peculiar expression. It was as though he was trying hard not to smile. That's weird. And Lockhart was hovering around all of them, making suggestions. It was definitely a cuss that killed her. Probably the Transmogrifian torture. Yeah, I've seen it used many times. So unlucky I wasn't there. I know the very count curse that would have saved her. Lockhart's comments were punctuated by Filch's dry, racking sobs. He was slumped in a chair by the desk, unable to look at Mrs. Norris, his face in his hands. Much as he detested Filch, Harry couldn't help feeling a bit sorry for him, though not nearly as sorry as he felt for himself. If Dumbledore believed Filch, he would be expelled for sure. Dumbledore was now muttering strange words under his breath, and tapping Mrs. Norris with his wand, but nothing happened. She continued to look as though she had been recently stuffed. I remember something very similar happening in Ouagadougou. That's how you pronounce that. Ouagadougou, said Lockhart. A series of attacks. The full story's in my autobiography. I was able to provide the townsfolk with various amulets, which cleared the matter up at once. The photographs of Lockhart on the walls were all nodding in agreement as he talked. One of them had forgotten to remove his hairnet. At last Dumbledore straightened up. She's not dead, Argus, he said softly. Lockhart stopped abruptly in the middle of counting the number of murders he had prevented. Not dead, choked Filch, looking through his fingers at Mrs. Norris. But why is she all stiff and frozen? She has been petrified, said Dumbledore. Ah, I thought so, said Lockhart. But how, I cannot say. Ask him, shrieked Filch, turning his blotched and tear-stained face to Harry. No second year could have done this, said Dumbledore firmly. It would take dark magic of the most advanced. He did it! He did it! Filch spat, his pouchy face purpling. You saw what he wrote on the wall. He found in my office. He knows I'm a... Filch's face worked horribly. He knows I'm a squib, he finished. I never touched Mrs. Norris, Harry said loudly, uncomfortably aware of everyone looking at him, including all the Lockharts on the walls. And I don't even know what a squib is. Rubbish, snarled Filch. He saw my quick-spell letter. If I might speak, Headmaster, said Snape from the shadows, and Harry's sense of foreboding increased. He was sure nothing Snape had to say was going to do him any good. Potter and his friends may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, he said, a slight sneer curling his mouth as though he doubted it. But we do have a set of suspicious circumstances here. Why was he in the upstairs corridor at all? Why wasn't he at the Halloween feast? Harry, Ron, and Hermione all launched into an explanation about the Deathday party. There were hundreds of ghosts. They'll tell you we were there. But why not join the feast afterward? Said Snape, his black eyes glittering in the candlelight. Why go up to that corridor? Ron and Hermione looked at Harry. Because, Harry said, his heart thumping very fast. Something told him it would sound very far-fetched if he told them he had been led there by a bodiless voice no one but he could hear. Because we were tired and wanted to go to bed, he said. Without any supper? Said Snape, a triumphant smile flickering across his gaunt face. I didn't think ghosts provided food fit for living people at their parties. We weren't hungry, said Ron, loudly as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Snape's nasty smile widened. I suggest, Headmaster, that Potter is not being entirely truthful, he said. It might be a good idea if he were deprived of certain privileges until he is ready to tell us the whole story. I personally feel he should be taken off the Gryffindor Quidditch team until he is ready to be honest. Ah, you wish. It's not enough that your whole team has Nimbus 2001s. You know your team isn't good enough to beat Harry on a lesser broom, so you try to take Harry out as well? Nah, man. That ain't happening. Really, Severus, said Professor McGonagall sharply, I see no reason to stop the boy playing Quidditch. Good thing McGonagall's there. Good thing she's there. She's straightening this out. This cat wasn't hit over the head with a broomstick. There's no evidence at all that Potter has done anything wrong. Dumbledore was giving Harry a searching look. His twinkling light blue gaze made Harry feel as though he were being X-rayed. Innocent until proven guilty, Severus, he said firmly. Snape looked furious. So did Filch. My cat has been petrified, he shrieked, his eyes popping. I want to see some punishment! We will be able to cure her, Argus, said Dumbledore patiently. Professor Sprout recently managed to procure some mandrakes. As soon as they have reached their full size, I will have a potion made that will revive Mrs. Norris. I'll make it, Lockhart butted in. I must have done it 100 times. I could whip up a mandrake restorative draught in my sleep. Excuse me, said Snape icily, but I believe I am the potions master at this school. He's Snape, the potions master. There was a very awkward pause. You may go, Dumbledore said to Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They went as quickly as they could without actually running. When they were a floor up from Lockhart's office, they turned into an empty classroom and closed the door quickly behind them. Harry squinted at his friends' darkened faces. Do you think I should have told them about that voice I heard? No, said Ron without hesitation. Hearing voices no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world. Something in Ron's voice made Harry ask, You do believe me, don't you? Of course I do, said Ron quickly, but you must admit it's weird. I know it's weird, said Harry. The whole thing's weird. What was that writing on the wall about? The chamber has been opened. What's that supposed to mean? You know, it sort of rings a bell, said Ron slowly. I think someone told me a story about a secret chamber at Hogwarts once. Might have been Bill. And what on earth's a squib? Said Harry. To his surprise, Ron stifled a snigger. Well, it's not really funny. It's not funny, really. But as it's Filch, he said. A squib is someone who was born into a wizarding family but hasn't got any magic powers. Kind of the opposite of muggle-born wizards, but squibs are quite unusual. If Filch is trying to learn magic from a quick spell course, I reckon he must be a squib. It would explain a lot, like why he hates students so much. Ron gave a satisfied smile. He's bitter. A clock chimed somewhere. Midnight, said Harry. Wow, the feast goes late. We'd better get to bed before Snape comes along and tries to frame us for something else. For a few days the school could talk of little else but the attack on Mrs. Norris. Filch kept it fresh in everyone's minds by pacing the spot where she had been attacked, as though he thought the attacker might come back. Harry had seen him scrubbing the message on the wall with Mrs. Scour's all-purpose magical mess remover, but to no effect. The word still gleamed as brightly as ever on the stone. When Filch wasn't guarding the scene of the crime, he was skulking red-eyed through the corridors, lunging out at unsuspecting students and trying to put them in detention for things like breathing loudly and looking happy. Ginny Weasley seemed very disturbed by Mrs. Norris's fate. Yes, Ginny Weasley is disturbed. Particularly disturbed. According to Ron, she was a great cat lover. She is. Ginny actually loves animals of all kinds. Yeah. I like that about her. But you haven't really got to know Mrs. Norris, Ron told her, bracingly. Honestly, we're much better off without her. Ginny's lip trembled. Stuff like this doesn't often happen at Hogwarts. That's not true. That's not true. There's all kinds of stuff that happens every year. This happens every year. Maybe it's just a Harry Potter thing. Maybe, like, Hogwarts is completely normal and Harry's not there. Just, like, nothing exciting happens if Harry doesn't go. That could be. Ron assured her. They'll catch the maniac who did it and have him out of here in no time. I just hope he's got time to petrify Filch before he's expelled. I'm only joking, Ron added hastily as Ginny blanched. The attack had also had an effect on Hermione. It was quite unusual for Hermione to spend a lot of time reading, but she was now doing almost nothing else. Nor could Harry and Ron get much response from her when they asked what she was up to, and not until the following Wednesday did they find out. Harry had been held back in potions, where Snape had made him stay behind to scrape tube worms off the desks. After a hurried lunch, he went upstairs to meet Ron in the library and saw Justin Finch-Fletchley, the Hufflepuff boy from herbology, coming toward him. Harry had just opened his mouth to say hello when Justin caught sight of him and turned abruptly and sped off in the opposite direction. He believes that Harry's the heir Slytherin trying to get rid of Muggleborns, and Justin Finch-Fletchley is a Muggleborn. That's why he ran. Harry found Ron at the back of the library measuring his history of magic homework. Professor Binns had asked for a 3-foot-long composition on the medieval assembly of European wizards. That's so weird. Like, I mean, I get it. Back in school, when you wrote essays and the like, they would measure it by how many words or how many pages. Like, I want a 3-page essay, or I want a 500-word essay. But with at Hogwarts, it's by length. Like, I want, what was it? 3-foot-long composition, because they write on parchment, which is it's not pre-cut paper. It's like there's like rolls of it, and so like you stretch it out and you write on it, and there's no lines on it either, and you write until you've got 3 feet long worth of paper written on. It's just different. It's interesting. Did I read that bit? The medieval assembly of European wizards. Yes, I did. I don't believe it. I'm still 8 inches short, said Ron fiercely, letting go of his parchment, which sprang back into a roll. And Hermione's done 4 feet 7 inches, and her writing's tiny. Where is she? Asked Harry, grabbing the tape measure and unrolling his own homework. Somewhere over there, said Ron, pointing along the shelves. Looking for another book? I think she's trying to read the whole library before Christmas. Harry told Ron about Justin Finch-Fletchley running away from him. Dunno why you care. Thought he was a bit of an idiot, said Ron, scribbling away, making his writing as large as possible. That's probably what I would do. You remember back in school when it wasn't quite long enough, so you would cram as many useless words in as possible. Instead of saying can't, you'd be like cannot. Cannot is one word. You probably would try it though anyway. Do not. You would stop using contractions. You would try to use as many words as possible. In conclusion, you would just make really redundant sentences to make it as long as possible. All that junk about Lockhart being so great. Hermione emerged from between the bookshelves. She looked irritable and at last seemed ready to talk to them. All the copies of Hogwarts History have been taken out, she said, sitting down next to Harry and Ron, and there's a 2-week waiting list. I wish I had left my copy at home, but I couldn't fit it in my trunk with all the Lockhart books. Why do you want it? Said Harry. The same reason everyone else wants it, said Hermione, to read up on the legend of the Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip. And I can't find the story anywhere else. They need a wizard Google. They could call it Woogle. I know, I've made that joke before. It's not even my joke. That's Call Me Kevin's joke on YouTube. It's funny, though. Hermione, let me read you composition, said Ron desperately, checking his watch. No, I won't, said Hermione, suddenly severe. You've had 10 days to finish it. I only need another 2 inches. Come on. The bell rang. Ron and Hermione led the way to History of Magic, bickering. History of Magic was the dullest subject on their schedule. Professor Binns, who taught it, was their only ghost teacher, and the most exciting thing that ever happened in his classes was his entering the room through the blackboard. Ancient and shriveled, many people said he hadn't noticed he was dead. He had simply got up to teach one day and left his body behind in an armchair in front of the staff room fire. His routine had not varied in the slightest since. In the movie, it's not Professor Binns who has this discussion with the class, it's Professor McGonagall, but it's actually much better in the movie. I think it would have been better with Professor McGonagall. She's just a more interesting character all around, and it just makes sense for them to use her in the movie because you'd have to pay a whole nother actor, and you'd have to introduce him long before now to get the audience to relate to him long enough before this point. It was just easier to just have it be Professor McGonagall in the movie. Today was as boring as ever. Professor Binns opened his notes and began to read in a flat drone like an old vacuum cleaner until nearly everyone in the class was in a deep stupor, occasionally coming to long enough to copy down a name or date, then falling asleep again. He had been speaking for half an hour when something happened that had never happened before. Hermione put up her hand. Okay, maybe not in this class. It's ever happened before. Professor Binns, glancing up in the middle of a deadly dull lecture on the International Warlock Convention of 1289, looked amazed. He doesn't even know the students' names. Miss Granger, Professor. I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the Chamber of Secrets, said Hermione in a clear voice. Dean Thomas, who had been sitting with his mouth hanging open, gazing out of the window, jerked out of his trance. Lavender Brown's head came up off her arms, and Neville Longbottom's elbow slipped off his desk. Professor Binns blinked. My subject is history of magic, he said in his dry, wheezy voice. I deal with facts, Miss Granger, not myths and legends. He cleared his throat with a small noise like chalk snapping and continued. In September of that year, a subcommittee of Sardinian sorcerers. He stuttered to a halt. Hermione's hand was waving in the air again. Miss Grant, please, sir, don't legends always have a basis in fact? Professor Binns was looking at her in such amazement, Hermione was sure no student had ever interrupted him before, alive or dead. Well, said Professor Binns slowly, yes, one could argue that, I suppose. He peered at Hermione as though he had never seen a student properly before. However, the legend of which you speak is such a very sensational, even ludicrous tale. But the whole class was now hanging on Professor Binns' every word. He looked dimly at them all, every face turned to his. Harry could tell he was completely thrown by such an unusual show of interest. Oh, very well, he said slowly. Let me see. The Chamber of Secrets. You all know, of course, that the Hogwarts was founded over 1,000 years ago. The precise date is uncertain, by the 4 greatest witches and wizards of the age. The 4 schoolhouses are named after them: Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin. They built this castle together, far from prying Muggle eyes, for it was an age when magic was feared by common people, and witches and wizards suffered much persecution. He paused, gazed blearily around the room, and continued. For a few years, the founders worked in harmony together, seeking out youngsters who showed signs of magic and bringing them to the castle to be educated. But then disagreements sprang up between them. A rift began to grow between Slytherin and the others. Slytherin wished to be more selective about the students admitted to Hogwarts. He believed that magical learning should be kept within all magic families. He disliked taking students of Muggle parentage, believing them to be untrustworthy. After a while, there was a serious argument on the subject between Slytherin and Gryffindor, and Slytherin left the school. Professor Binns paused again, pursing his lips, looking like a wrinkled old tortoise. Reliable historical sources tell us this much, he said, but these honest facts have been obscured by the fanciful legend of the Chamber of Secrets. The story goes that Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in the castle, of which the other founders knew nothing. Slytherin, according to the legend, sealed the Chamber of Secrets so that none would be able to open it until his own true heir arrived at the school. The heir alone would be able to unseal the Chamber of Secrets, unleash the horror within, and use it to purge the school of all who were unworthy to study magic. There was a silence as he finished telling the story, but it wasn't the usual sleepy silence that filled Professor Binns' classes. There was unease in the air as everyone continued to watch him, hoping for more. Professor Binns looked faintly annoyed. The whole thing is arrant nonsense, of course, he said. Naturally, the school has been searched for evidence of such a chamber many times. By the most learned witches and wizards, it does not exist. A tale told to frighten the gullible. Hermione's hand was back in the air. Sir, what exactly do you mean by the horror within the chamber? That is believed to be some sort of monster, which the heir of Slytherin alone can control, said Professor Binns in his dry, reedy voice. The class exchanged nervous looks. I tell you, the thing does not exist, said Professor Binns, shuffling his notes. There is no chamber, and no monster. But, sir, says Seamus Finnegan, if the chamber can only be opened by Slytherin's true heir, no one else would be able to find it, would they? Nonsense, oh flattery, said Professor Binns in an aggravated tone. If a long succession of Hogwarts headmasters and headmistresses haven't found the thing. But, Professor, piped up Parvati Patil, you'd probably have to use dark magic to open it. Just because a wizard doesn't use dark magic doesn't mean he can't, Miss Pennyfeather, snapped Professor Binns. I repeat, if the likes of Dumbledore, but maybe you've got to be related to Slytherin, so Dumbledore couldn't, began Dean Thomas, but Professor Binns had enough. That will do, he said sharply. It is a myth. It does not exist. There is not a shred of evidence that Slytherin ever built so much as a secret broom cupboard. I regret telling you such a foolish story. We will return, if you please, to history, to solid, believable, verifiable fact. And within 5 minutes the class had sunk back into its usual torpor, or sluggish inactivity, what that word means. I always knew Salazar Slytherin was a twisted old loony, Ron told Harry and Hermione as they fought their way through the teeming corridors at the end of the lesson to drop off their bags before dinner. But I never knew he started all this pure-blood stuff. I wouldn't be in his house if he paid me. Honestly, if the Sorting Hat had tried to put me in Slytherin, I'd have got the train straight back home. They have no idea that that's what happened to Harry. Harry was almost placed into Slytherin. Hermione nodded fervently, but Harry didn't say anything. His stomach had just dropped unpleasantly. Harry never told Ron and Hermione that the Sorting Hat had seriously considered putting him in Slytherin. He could remember, as though it was yesterday, the small voice that had spoken in his ear when he'd placed the hat on his head a year before. "You could be great, you know. It's all here, in your head. And Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that." But Harry, who had already heard of Slytherin House's reputation for turning out dark wizards, had thought desperately not Slytherin, and the hat had said, "Oh, well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor." Yes, very important, very important. This is the theme of the entire book, I believe. One of the themes, there's many. It's that your choices are what matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter your magical ability, your ability in anything. A true value of character comes from the choices that you make. And Harry, who might have succeeded far better in his Hogwarts career in Slytherin, he chose not to be in Slytherin because he didn't want to sacrifice his character. And he probably wasn't thinking that way directly, but that is why he made the choice that he did. But he's going to struggle with that. He's going to struggle with that concept throughout the book. Like, he's going to struggle with his personal identity by who he wants to be and who he feels like he might be. And it's very important. As they were shunted along in the throng, Cullen Creevey went past. "Hiya, Harry." "Hello, Cullen," said Harry automatically. Harry, a boy in my class has been saying you'll..." But Cullen was so small he couldn't fight against the tide of people bearing him toward the great hall. They heard him squeak, "See you, Harry," and he was gone. "What's a boy in his class saying about you?" Hermione wondered. "That I'm Slytherin's heir, I expect," said Harry, his stomach dropping another inch or so as he suddenly remembered the way Justin Finch-Fletchley had run away from him at lunchtime. "People here will believe anything," said Ron in disgust. It's true. Get used to this. As I said in the last book, when they lost all those points for Gryffindor and how when everybody was so excited to see Harry, now they all hate him. That's going to happen like every book. People are going to find a reason to hate Harry Potter every book. And here's another one. Here, it's happening again. The crowd thinned and they were able to climb the next staircase without difficulty. "Do you really think there's a Chamber of Secrets?" Ron asked Hermione. "I don't know," she said, frowning. Dumbledore couldn't kill Mrs. Norris, and that makes me think that whatever attacked her might not be, well, human. As she spoke, they turned a corner and found themselves at the end of the very long corridor where the attack had happened. They stopped and looked. The scene was just as it had been that night, except that there were no stiff cat hanging from the torch bracket, and an empty chair stood against the wall bearing the message, "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened." "That's where Filch had been keeping guard," Ron muttered. They looked at each other. The corridor was deserted. "Can't hurt to have a poke around," said Harry, dropping his bag and getting to his hands and knees so that he could crawl along, searching for clues. Here they are. Detectives on the case. As usual. "Scorch marks," he said. "Here. And here. Come and look at this," said Hermione. "This is funny. Scorch marks. Why would there be scorch marks? That's weird. I have no idea what that's about." Harry got up and crossed to the window next to the message on the wall. Hermione was pointing at the topmost pane, where around 20 spiders were scuttling, apparently fighting to get through a small crack. A long, silvery thread was dangling like a rope, as though they had all climbed it in their hurry to get outside. So in the movie, they see the spiders right by the scene, right after it happens. And in the movie, that makes way more sense, because they would be long gone by now. They wouldn't suddenly be here at this spot long after the incident happened. They would be gone by this point. Another case where the movie does it better. "Have you ever seen spiders act like that?" said Hermione wonderingly. "No," said Harry. "Have you, Ron?" "Ron?" He's gone. This is... Right. I'm just reading my notes. My notes are exactly what I just told you. He looked over his shoulder. Ron was standing well back and seemed to be fighting the impulse to run. "What's up?" said Harry. "I don't like spiders," said Ron tensely. "I never knew that," said Hermione, looking at Ron in surprise. "You've used spiders in potions loads of times." "I don't mind them dead," said Ron, who was carefully looking anywhere but at the window. "I just don't like the way they move." Hermione giggled. "It's not funny," said Ron fiercely. "If you must know, when I was 3, Fred turned my teddy bear into a great big filthy spider because I broke his toy broomstick. You wouldn't like them either if you've been holding your bear and suddenly had too many legs and—" He broke off, shuddering. Hermione was obviously still trying not to laugh. Feeling they had better get off the subject, Harry said, "Remember all the water on the floor? Where did that come from? Someone's mopped it up." "It was about here," said Ron, recovering himself to walk a few paces past Filch's chair and pointing. "Level with this door." He reached for the brass doorknob, but suddenly withdrew his hand as though he had been burned. "What's the matter?" said Harry. "Can't go in there," said Ron gruffly. "There's a girl's toilet." "Oh, Ron, there won't be anyone in there," said Hermione, standing up and coming over. "That's Moaning Myrtle's place. Come on, let's have a look." And ignoring the large out-of-order sign, she opened the door. It was the gloomiest, most depressing bathroom Harry had ever set foot in. Under a large, cracked, and spotted mirror were a row of chipped sinks. The floor was damp and reflected the dull light given off by the stubs of a few candles burning low in their holders. The wooden doors to the stalls were flaking and scratched, and one of them was dangling off its hinges. Hermione put her fingers to her lips and set off toward the end stall. When she reached it, she said, "Hello, Myrtle. How are you?" Harry and Ron went to look. Moaning Myrtle was floating above the tank of the toilet, picking a spot on her chin. "This is a girl's bathroom," she said, eyeing Ron and Harry suspiciously. "They're not girls." "No," Hermione agreed. "I just wanted to show them how, nice it is in here." She waved vaguely at the dirty old mirror and the damp floor. "Ask her if she saw anything," Harry mouthed at Hermione. "What are you whispering?" said Myrtle, staring at him. "Nothing," said Harry quickly. "We wanted to ask—" "I wish people would stop talking behind my back," said Myrtle in a voice choked with tears. "I do have feelings, you know, even if I am dead." "Myrtle, no one wants to upset you," said Hermione. "Harry only—" "No one wants to upset me. That's a good one," howled Myrtle. "My life was nothing but misery at this place, and now people come along ruining my death." "We wanted to ask you if you've seen anything funny lately," said Hermione quickly, "because a cat was attacked right outside your front door on Halloween." "Did you see anyone near here that night?" said Harry. "I wasn't paying attention," said Myrtle dramatically. "Peeves upset me so much I came in here and tried to kill myself. Then, of course, I remembered that I'm... "Already dead?" said Ron helpfully. Myrtle gave a tragic sob, rose up in the air and turned over and dived headfirst into the toilet, splashing water all over them and vanishing from sight, although from the direction of her muffled sobs she had come to rest somewhere in the U-bend. Harry and Ron stood with their mouths open, but Hermione shrugged wearily and said, "Honestly, that was almost cheerful for Myrtle. Come on, let's go." Harry had barely closed the door on Myrtle's gurgling sobs when a loud voice made all 3 of them jump. "Ron!" Whoops. This looks bad. Percy Weasley had stopped dead at the head of the stairs, prefect badge agleam, an expression of complete shock on his face. Oh, Percy is also a red herring, because we see him out and about at strange moments like now. "That's a girl's bathroom," he gasped. "What were you—" "Just having a look around," Ron shrugged. "Clues, you know." Percy swelled in a manner that reminded Harry forcefully of Mrs. Weasley. "What?" I forgot. Okay, he says, "Get away from there," Perry said. I'm not kidding you. The book says Perry, not... It doesn't say Percy, it says Perry. I don't know if you can see it. I marked it too. You can kind of see that, I guess. It's not focusing very well. Trust me, it says Perry. And I put the platypus next to it. That's a funny typo. I have an old copy of this book, a very old copy. They probably have fixed it since then, but I was like, Perry? Some guy named Perry just came out. Striding toward them and starting to bustle them along, flapping his arms. Don't you care what this looks like? Coming back here while everyone's at dinner. Why shouldn't we be here? Said Ron hotly, stopping short and glaring at Percy. Listen, we never laid a finger on that cat. That's what I told Ginny, said Percy fiercely, but she still seems to think you're going to get expelled. I've never seen her so upset, crying her eyes out. You might think of her. All the first years are thoroughly overexcited by this business. Again, Ginny Weasley, being very upset about this. Like, more upset than normal. You don't care about Ginny, said Ron, whose ears were now reddening. You're just worried I'm going to mess up your chances of being head boy. "5 points from Gryffindor," Percy said tersely, fingering his prefect badge, "and I hope it teaches you a lesson. No more detective work, or I'll write to Mum." And he strode off, the back of his neck as red as Ron's ears. Harry, Ron, and Hermione chose seats as far as possible from Percy in the common room that night. Ron was still in a very bad temper and kept blotting his charms homework. When he reached absently from his wand to remove the smudges, it ignited the parchment. Fuming almost as much as his homework, Ron slammed the Standard Book of Spells Grade 2 shut. To Harry's surprise, Hermione followed suit. Who can it be, though? She said in a quiet voice, as though continuing a conversation they had just been having. Who'd want to frighten all the squibs and muggleborns out of Hogwarts? Let's think, said Ron in mock puzzlement. Who do we all know who thinks muggleborns are scum? He looked at Hermione. Hermione looked back, unconvinced. If you're talking about Malfoy, of course I am, said Ron. You heard him. You'll be next, mudbloods. Come on, you've only got to look at his foul rat face to know it's him. Malfoy, the heir Slytherin, said Hermione skeptically. Look at his family, said Harry, closing his books too, though a lot of them have been Slytherin. He's always boasting about it. They could easily be Slytherin's descendants. His father's definitely evil enough. They wish. They wish they were that cool. They're not. They're wannabes, honestly. They could have had the key to the Chamber of Secrets for centuries, said Ron, handing it down, father to son. Well, said Hermione cautiously, I suppose it's possible. But how do we prove it? Said Harry darkly. There might be a way, said Hermione slowly, dropping her voice still further with a quick glance across the room at Percy. Of course, it would be difficult and dangerous. Very dangerous. We'd be breaking about 50 school rules, I expect. If in a month or so you feel like explaining, you will let us know, won't you? Said Ron irritably. All right, said Hermione coldly. What we'd need to do is to get inside the Slytherin common room and ask Malfoy a few questions without him realizing it's us. But that's impossible, Harry said as Ron laughed. No, it's not, said Hermione. All we'd need would be some Polyjuice potion. What's that? Said Ron and Harry together. Snape mentioned it in class a few weeks ago. Do you think we've got nothing better to do with potions than listen to Snape? Muttered Ron. It transforms you into somebody else. Think about it. We could change into 3 of the Slytherins. No one would know it was us. Malfoy would probably tell us anything. He's probably boasting about it in the Slytherin common room right now. If only we could hear him. This Polyjuice stuff sounds a bit dodgy to me, said Ron, frowning. What if we were stuck looking like 3 of the Slytherins forever? It wears off after a while, said Hermione, waving her hand impatiently. But getting hold of the recipe would be very difficult. Snape said it was in a book called Most Potent Potions, and it's bound to be in the restricted section of the library. There was only one way to get out of a book from the restricted section. You needed a signed note of permission from a teacher. Hard to see why we'd want the book, really, said Ron, if we weren't going to try and make one of the potions. I think, said Hermione, that if we made it sound as though we were just interested in the theory, we might stand a chance. Oh, come on, no teacher's going to fall for that, said Ron. They'd have to be really thick. I think we know a teacher that would be thick enough to fall for it. Yeah, but that's the end of the chapter. I feel like I was going to say something else. I forget what it was. Malfoy, Polyjuice Potion. Polyjuice Potion is mentioned in Half-Blood Prince, but I don't know if it's a significant connection because Polyjuice is also used a lot in Book 7. I think it's used in Goblet of Fire as well, so I don't think Polyjuice Potion in and of itself is a direct link between Half-Blood Prince and Chamber of Secrets. They are, but Polyjuice Potion is mentioned. It's one of the three, isn't it one of the three potions that Slughorn shows the students? He shows them Amortentia, Polyjuice Potion, and was it Veritaserum that he showed them? I think it might be. And then, of course, there's Felix Felicis, but that wasn't one of the three main cauldrons that he had out for their first lesson. Anyway, not super important for our purposes. But yeah. So I think we're pretty much halfway through the book. We just have 8 chapters left. Only 8 chapters left. I'm pretty sure, right? There's 18 chapters in Chamber of Secrets. Yep. So I don't know if I'll be streaming next Saturday. I'd like to think that I will be, but I also like to think that I won't be. I want to stream, but I also want to get paid. So, it's possible that this coming week I will get a job, and that job, it's a retail job, so my schedule's going to be different every week. So I can't have a set streaming schedule, so streaming might not be a thing anymore. So I'll probably get the job and whatever, but it's possible that, I don't know, I won't be working Saturday evening and I'll be like, I want to stream, so I'll stream. If I don't stream, I will try to make videos of this instead. So I don't know what's happening. It's kind of, my schedule's kind of up in the air. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please, if you're watching this after the fact, please leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of the video. Please leave a like on the video or the stream, whether it's live or not. It's helpful, tells YouTube that you like it. It's going to share it with other people. And if you want more content like this, click subscribe and click the bell notification icon so you can be notified the next time I upload and or stream, if I do. Also, follow me on Twitter. My information is there, link in the description, so that you can be notified. On Twitter, I post what's going on. I post my videos, when I'm streaming, if I'm not streaming, that sort of thing. So that might be useful to you. Yeah. No, actually, I don't enjoy editing videos, to be honest. I prefer just making them and posting them. But, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye.